First of all, I'd like to say that what I'm going to talk about is very important because I believe when there's a problem in the community, it affects all of us. To me, you don't have to be using drugs yourself for it to impact you. Our kids go to school, it's in our communities, and it's a dangerous problem. And one of the things I try to do when I speak to a group of individuals is not harp on how dangerous it is, because most of us already know that. And what I try to do is help educate individuals, because first of all, behind us is a world of ignorance, philosophical beliefs, morals, values, things we've been taught growing up. Seeing somebody with a problem is one thing, but knowing what to do about that is another thing. Addiction is in our churches. It's in our schools. And how do I gauge that? One of the things I always look at, the number of females in church compared to males. So when you start looking at data centered around that, that creates a problem. Where are the males? What are the males doing? We always talk about a strong family. Yeah. If the male is weak, guess what? The family is going to be weak. So alcohol and drugs create a weakness in our communities. One of the things that will benefit us is learning how to deal with that. At one time, I helped a church set up a hotline for addiction. In other words, people in the church would know what to do if somebody called the church and said that they had a problem. See, we got to get past getting on your knees praying. You know, God don't come down here and slap crack pipes out your hand. He don't come down here and slap whiskey bottles out your hand. If he did, we'd probably catch him and injure him. You know what I mean? So we got to figure out some things to do. And one of the things that I always try to do is go after young people first. You know, because we need to help our young people understand that all it takes is one time. In other words, you got to be careful of your friends, young people trying to get you to do certain things. That's why I always talk about young people being leaders and not followers. The average adolescent that starts using mood or mind altering substances the very first time usually does it with a friend. 13,500 people a day in this country try it for the first time every day. That's scary. Yeah. So young people have to understand that your brain is still growing. When does the brain fully develop? Who knows?
Age 20.
Come on. Huh?
18.
No, sir. But you can go in the military at what age? 18. Brain doesn't fully develop to age 24, 25. So when we start looking at, you know, we turn people loose. Look, young people in this country are hollering, I'll be glad when I get 18. You know, they think the sky's going to open up and something's going to fall down and hit them on the head. At 18, your brain is still developing. So the earlier you start doing certain things is how it impacts your life. If you start smoking cigarettes or drinking or being sexually active before time, that's going to create a problem. And so what happens with mood or mind-altering substances, there is something called neurobiology, which means that once you start putting something on your brain chemistry changes. Probably everybody here knows somebody that's got a problem, you know, with addiction. And we wonder, you know, is it a weakness? Why can't they just quit? Why can't they just stop? To me, that is a statement of ignorance in a sense. Because I believe that people that are negatively impacting their lives, they would quit if they could. See, addiction is about I want to quit, but guess what? I can't quit. Addiction is about having a psychological, physiological dependency on a mood or mind-altering substance. Whether you drink it, You know, we have all kind of high-risk behaviors. We deal with something called CASA, which is Christians Against Substance Abuse. Christians Against Substance Abuse deal with not just alcohol and drugs, but it's any substance. Ladies, you go shop too much. You go to the mall, you get your weed fixed too much, whatever it is. She said, no. Anything that causes problems to a substance, and that substance could be anything. What has happened in our society, we have painted everything up to be all nice and glory and beautiful, and we have not been taught to delay gratification. You know, I got to have it right now. Check our kids. You know, where little Aiden at? He hollers for everything. But that starts at a very young age. What about adults that are doing that? So what we find in addiction is someone becomes addicted to a substance. Now, how do you deal with that? First of all, if they've already crossed the line, there's something called use, abuse, and addiction. Everybody starts the same way, recreationally, situationally, experimenting. Anybody else say just try one? Yeah. You know you can't count, right? We have a hard time with that. So what happens is that once a person crosses the line into addiction, the rules of engagement change. There are things that happen along the way that people don't understand. When a person has crossed the line into addiction, most of us know that because you see it in their behavior. How can you tell whether or not a person got a problem? If you ask an addict if he's got a problem, guess what most of them say? No. A chief sign of the disease of addiction is denial. That means denial. D-E-N-I-A-L stands for don't even know I'm lying. In other words, you sitting up there saying I don't have a problem when all the evidence is there that you do. And guess what? It's hard to get a person like that to seek help. And always say this too. A person that's addicted has to have an enabler. In other words, there has to be somebody picking up the pieces around them. The strongest thing we have is confrontation. We don't confront one another. Well, first of all, we don't confront out of love. We confront, you know, God, what are we going to do about Jerome? We don't go to Jerome, we go to everybody else. Look, talking about Jerome, well, addiction thrives on that kind of stuff. And the best way to deal with Jerome is go to Jerome and say, Jerome, man, what is going on? Ain't nothing. I'm all right. Yeah, right. So when you start looking at individuals like that, we have to have referral sources. In other words, we have to have ways to get them to where they need to go. I work in an environment that deals with people that have crossed the line, and sometimes a person has to be taken out of their environment, away from the stimuli. Anybody here like to argue besides me? John? Jerome? Tiffany? I'm just, yeah. Well, you know, when you're around that stimuli, you can keep that going on and on and on. So you have to be removed from that. Addiction is the same way. I actually work with adolescents, and probably the youngest person I worked with is 12 years old. He was already addicted to something called Wildcat whiskey. Wow. Already had symptoms of cirrhosis. And when you start looking at that, see, we don't look at what happens to something when you put it in your body. Anybody in here that's, well, let me see. I don't know how many people in here, but I wouldn't be afraid to say half of them have already experimented with alcohol. Now, don't go out here and run and duck under the table and all that kind of stuff. We live in a society, this country, alcohol is the #1 drug in this country. There's over 130 million people in this country that are addicted to alcohol. If you turn on the TV, you'll see a commercial that says the night belongs to Michelob. They don't tell you who the morning belonged to. The morning belonged to BC headache powders, Rolaids, Buick. But when you think about that, it's all about supply and demand. If someone demands it, it's going to be supplied. If you go to any sporting event in this country, alcohol's all over the place. And so what we got to get young people to understand is that it's used for a social lubricant in this country. When somebody gets married in this country, they celebrate, right? Yeah. When a baby is born, they celebrate. Even where I come from, when they die, guess what? Maybe at the cemetery, drunk as I don't know what. But the reality is our country has become accustomed to that. So alcohol is doing for this country a very terrible thing. If you can drift back to Prohibition, y'all know what Prohibition was? Y'all? During Prohibition, a female could not drink in public. Now we got ladies drinking in public, and if you ever went to Canada or any of them places, man, ladies outdrink the men in Canada because it's so plentiful. When you start looking at those things, that has infiltrated over into the church. I tell the people the Church of Christ is a no-drinking church. They say, what do you mean? Because, you know, in different places, it's okay to drink. You know what I mean? And go to church. Well, when you start looking at that, alcohol is doing lots and lots of damage because of what happens. When you drink alcohol, it mixes with your blood, mixes with the oxygen, goes across your heart, up your brainstem, to your cerebral cortex, which is the computer in your body. All of us store information in that little bad boy. If I took off Jerome's shoe and stuck a lighter to it, he wouldn't say, I'll shoot fire. He'd automatically move. That's just how sensitive, that's just how sensitive our cerebral cortex is. So when you start putting a chemical on that, it's easy to become addicted. Let's talk about marijuana for a second. What's the most abused drug in the school system? Huh? Weed. Actually, prescription medication, but among young people, it's marijuana. You know, we got this thing. Now, remember years ago when we had a war against drugs? Now we got a war against legalization. And I went to the National Forum on Marijuana Legalization in Washington, D.C., and there were so many people up there that wants marijuana legalized till it's just unreal. Marijuana's got 400 different chemicals in it. How many know what the chemical is in marijuana that makes a person think they're high? THC. It's called Delta-9 THC. It's a cannabinoid. And there's about 40 different cannabinoids in marijuana, and only been about 17 of them identified what they will do. The consensus is that marijuana will have the same kind of negative impact on our society that alcohol does. The reason that marijuana is so impactful, we cannot afford, well, let's use Alabama. Alabama is a state that has a lot of people on government subsidy. We cannot afford for people to sit on the porch and wave at cars and talk about they're going to go to work next week. You going to work? Why not? I don't know. I ain't got no job. And the reality is that marijuana has something in it that causes a person to, you know what amotivational syndrome is? That's where you say you're going to do something and keep promising that you're going to do it, but guess what? You never do it. Marijuana also depletes acetylcholine in the brain. Acetylcholine is what helps young people remember and for you to retain information. You ever see anybody smoke a lot of weed, you ask them a question, they say, In other words, the information is stuck in the filter. And that's over and over. Long-term marijuana use will cause problems. How many ever heard of Willie Nelson? Willie Nelson, 74 years old, still smoking weed. Willie Nelson about retarded. No, I shouldn't say it. I mean, because he thinks that it's okay, and I tell young people, how many Willie Nelsons is it? How many states have legalized marijuana? Who knows? 3? No, sir. 23 states.
23 states?
Yes, sir. And say Tennessee's on the brink. When you start looking at that, that's amazing within itself, but look at the crime rate in Colorado now. And legalization will not fix what's going on. Now, you know, decriminalization is one thing versus legalization. There are many scientific results that could be used for marijuana, but it won't happen. Because we got people in the black market that's selling it to kids. Remember how old you have to be for your brain to be fully developed. So you start smoking Tweety Bird earlier, and guess what? Tweet, tweet. You're going to have problems. Prescription meds. How many have had a tooth pulled? Did the doctor give you anything? What did he give you? Oh, man. What? What did it do for you? Yeah, put you to sleep, really, right? For some people, right? People that become addicted to hydrocodone, though, they don't go to sleep. I had an adolescent taking 30 a day. And what? Yeah, because what happened? Yeah, 30 hydrocodone, 7.5s. What happens is addiction is about building up a tolerance. First, you build up a tolerance, then you build up physical dependency, then you lose control, then you have negative consequences. So the more you take, your body becomes accustomed to that. And what happens is tolerance is about taking more to reach the desired peak. You know, in other words, you drank 2 beers, now you drink 22. So it's about building up. The problem with prescription medication is that it's synthetic. You know, we talk about synthetic weed and all that. Hydrocodone is actually made in a lab. Some mad scientist said somewhere putting this stuff together. You go to Dr. Goody Goo, go to the pharmacy, take your prescription back there. You don't know what's on the paper. You pass it to Brian back there. He fill it, hand you something out over the counter. You go home and take it like, guess what? Like Jesus gave it to you. Well, the problem with that, with prescription medication and narcotics, is you can become addicted to that stuff. Very easy. We have so many, especially elderly people, man. We're abusing elderly people in this country with prescription medication. Young people love it from long as a year. Young people, athletes, you get injured on the football field. They give you some kind of medication. Had a kid at, I can say, the school, at Brooks High School. He dropped the oxycodone in the toilet, went in there and got it. Took it anyway. You know, being addicted to that kind of stuff is terrible. But most people that become addicted to prescription medication, it's hard to get off of. Very, very difficult. Because your body goes through withdrawals. And guess what? How many of us like pain in here? We don't like it. 2 more things, and then I'll go into the recovery part of it. We know about crystal meth and cocaine and all that kind of stuff, and heroin is on the rise in this country. What's real scary is we got young people having farming parties. That's where you take all the pills in your pocket and dump them in a bowl, and you just scoop it in and get out whatever you want. You don't know what it is. You could be taking, Jerome, you could be taking the birth control pill. You don't know. I'm talking about you high. Man. But that's becoming so prevalent in high school and colleges now, till we tell young people that, listen, you always got to be aware of your surroundings. Right. Never. I think one of the saddest stories is the young lady from here, from North Alabama, went with some of her friends to Nashville, and some guy put some GHB in her drink in the club. And GHB is a chemical that if you take too much of it, it will actually kill you, but it won't show up in an autopsy 6 hours later. Which is called in a lot of places, and they keep them in bars. The bartender puts it in your drink. See, that's why we tell young people, stay away from these places. Yeah. You don't even have no business up in there. You don't know. Look, you jumping them down like James Brown. No, sir. You never know what's in a place when you go in them kind of places. Right. Those kind of drugs are prevalent. And always remember this. All you do is change one molecule in a drug, and you got a different drug. People are always trying to figure out how to make another drug. This synthetic marijuana, some crazy guy over at Virginia Tech created that stuff, sitting in a lab. And now kids are smoking it like it's going out of style. So what I always try to get people to see is that there is always a way out. First of all, don't do it. Amen. And I tell people that if you're doing it, you need to stop doing it. period. Because you're on a dead-end street that's going to end up somewhere you don't want to be. What we promote is people that have problems, we promote them getting treatment. We send them to 12-step meetings because that's important. And I think the church is way behind on the concept of 12-step meetings because there needs to be a place. Addiction is about identification. I need to be able to identify with you. And therefore, that creates a safe haven. That creates support. Because most people that are addicted, they think don't nobody understand what they're going through. Man, you don't understand. You never did that. And so there needs to be some kind of way for them to identify. Support groups are very, very helpful for many reasons. It helps the person get out of that environment. It helps them also to reach out to other people. See, always remember, Jerome can reach people I can't reach just by his own personal experiences. That's why we all don't have to have done the same things, been to the same places, but it's all about all of us together. None of us is as smart as all of us. In other words, one person by themselves is weak. Addiction thrives on that. If I can take you out over there by yourself, I got you. But if I take everybody over there, guess what? Young people, always remember that somebody is watching you. And you never really know who it is. People, when you go in certain places, because we live in a terrible country, in one sense, because everybody's not on the same page and everybody don't have the values that you have, or the morals, or believe what you believe. So you got to be on alert for that kind of stuff. Addiction is waiting on people to try it right now.
I thought today went really well. We had a good turnout. I learned a lot about drug awareness and taking care of my body, and looking forward to it happening again if it does.
I think this was very good. It's very beneficial. I think we need to educate the community more. A lot of people don't know the risk factors of high blood pressure, diabetes, and I think this is just something, this is a start.
I'm Tiffany Malone. I work for Crestwood Medical Center in Huntsville.
You're always there in time of need. Am I not losing my will? You'll be there. Push me